Hello everybody, it is Elagatua, and we're back after a shorter than typical delay because it is time now for the Smacky Cup 5 to start. Now, as you would know if you watched some of my other videos, the Smacky Cup 3 and the Smacky Cup 4 are still ongoing, but it has been 6 months since the start of the last Smacky Cup, so here we are again in Smacky Cup 5, and we've got another series of games and maps to break down and talk about. So we'll be getting into that. The first round map is called Eye Opening, and I was really impressed with this map. I think there's a lot to it, and I really enjoyed the game that I played on this map, and also just the quality of the games that I've seen from some of the other games that ended early. I really think there's a wide variety of strategies, and there's a lot of complexity to this map. And I feel like oftentimes maps tend to turn into a little bit stagnant strategically, where there's kind of one strategy that you're trying to kind of accomplish better. But I really do feel like there's a pretty good amount of strategic options on this map that can all be viable depending on how you feel like attacking the map. And so that's really exciting, and I was really impressed by the design of this map. So we're gonna break all of that down, and we're probably going to spend a little bit longer than usual actually in the map breakdown section, just because there is a lot to break down, and there's a lot to really understand before we even can get into the game. So I know that's not everybody's jam, but as usual, if you don't care about the map breakdown and you just want to see me break down the replay of the game that I played on this map, then check the timestamps or whatever the chapter markers on this video. You can skip right to that. But for now, we're going to start breaking down this map. So let's take a look at our bases. So we got bases here, here, and then we got the third neutral base over there. And then likewise here, and then over there for the neutral base. And why don't we start off by talking about this base in the corner. And this base is particularly noteworthy because over here you have a wall of mountains, and then over diagonally you have a wall of rivers, and then you've got the ocean. And likewise on the other side, you get the same thing. So what this means is that no vehicles are going to be swimming across or hiking across these mountains. So this is going to be your infantry only bases unless you decide to invest in a lander. And we'll talk a little bit more about whether landers are a good idea later on. But for now, just know that this is going to be almost certainly an infantry base for the majority of the game. And the fact that it is an infantry only base has pretty substantial implications for everything else on the map. Okay, so that's that base. There's not too much to say about reinforcements from this base. You can send infantry over to this city and then over the mountains to get to like these properties. But also you can send infantry up onto this river, and then you've got pretty fast access to like these properties here, and then also this chain, which is also 3 away from the properties that I just mentioned. So even though it seems like this area is like really isolated, the amount of impediments to your infantry reinforcement are not super high, because it's just this single tile here that is slowing you down. Once you're past that, if you want to just go straight up, then there's not really anything that's going to be blocking your way. All right, let's look at these other 2 more central bases. So this base here. So this base, we're blocked by mountains here, and then we've got rivers kind of going this way, and then we've got a sea tile here, and there's a pipe seam here. So you can see that these two bases are kind of locked away, and any vehicles that are going to be going to the center of the map, at least from this starting base here that we're going to look at first, we have to go over here, and then this is one tank move here. And then from here, you've got pretty free reign to kind of go wherever you want. Okay, and then your infantry, okay, well, they can just go straight across the mountains this way. So they've got a much faster path to the center of the map. And generally, you're not really going to be sending infantry this direction at all, because in practice, the infantry for like these properties here are going to come from this base. And you can see in this center area here, there's not a huge amount of contested properties, especially in this middle area that's kind of between the two bases. There's actually no contested, or there's no capturable properties at all. So your infantry don't really have a reason to head into this direction too much, because all the stuff that this base would be responsible for is kind of in this area, which is straight up. Okay, and then this base, one final thing. So I guess this base can technically go this direction as well, but you're paying for it by going through this extra forest, and you also are likely looping around this way. So it's pretty uncommon. Generally, you're almost always going to be sending vehicles through this route to the center of the map, and it's not really anything more complicated than that. Okay, and lastly, we've got this base. So this base, well, you start off, you got access to this pipe seam here, but that's not going to start off with any damage on it. So that's not going to be a thing that's available to you at the start. Similar to the other base, you have the ability to send infantry kind of straight up or to like this tile as well. And then you go across the river and you're kind of in this area here, which ends up having a lot of fighting. But especially early on, you're going to be sending infantry over here because you've got these properties here that are closest to this base. And so that's where you're going to have to send at least a few guys over to take care of those. But after that, unless you're trying to reinforce down here, the infantry are either going to go straight down, or they might be utilizing the black boat. But we'll talk about the black boat and the pre-deployed units a little bit later on as well. As for vehicles from this base are a little bit interesting as well. And the reason is, if you're going to send them to the center of the map, well, you can choose to send them this way, which is pretty slow. But if you go this way, you have to kind of go around the sea tile, and then again, you're going through these two forests as well. So both of your options kind of stink for your vehicle reinforcement, at least early on. Fortunately, if you're building recons from this base, you do have a lot of shoal tiles here. And so with the recons, you can get out onto the center area, or at least this area, very, very quickly, because this is your first recon move. And then your second recon move you can actually get onto this city because it's all shoals. And also you can get adjacent to both of these two cities as well. These two. And then onto here. So recons are quite good from this base to put pressure on the sides, because they can move very, very quickly. And then you have the ability to potentially shift them towards the center because you have some favorable terrain here that you can kind of get them zipping along pretty quick. In the early game, generally you're going to want this base here to be your primary vehicle base while you're still in the capture phase and kind of establishing more income. But then after that, generally both of these bases are going to be building vehicles almost every single turn, because this base is not going to have the option to build vehicles. So it's going to have to be from the other two bases. Once your airport gets online as well, then that can mix things up as well. But there's going to be likely going to be a period of time where it's just going to be these two bases pumping vehicles and this base pumping infantry in kind of the late mid game. All right, let's take a moment and talk about these ports. So we got ports over here and over here. Obviously, these are not contestable, to say the least. There's one infantry move away from the base, and the ports aren't super relevant other than they can refuel your black boat, which is something that you're going to have to use in this map. So that's pretty handy, but your black boat does start on the other side of the map from the port. So if you're going to refuel the black boat, you're going to need to send it over to the other side of the map eventually. And you will have to send it to the other side of the map eventually because you will be needing to capture the airport and that comm tower, and then you have the option of going for that city in the corner as well. And it's generally not a bad idea to go for it. It's not especially huge burden to get it to get an infantry over there, at least at some point in the game. So port good for refueling black boats, but the other question that is probably worth discussing is this a map that you should consider a lander on? And the answer to that is basically you should not. This map is not a hugely high income map. I think split map is like 21k or 22k. I think it's 22k because in this replay I'm looking at, there's 4 properties that are uncaptured and they're both at 20k. So even income is 22k, which is not like excessively high. That's about average. And honestly, I think that's like kind of the sweet spot for maps in general. Like 22k is a really good place to be. Because any player that gets an advantage starts to hit that threshold where you can get tech units out without having to base skip, which is important. But yeah, regardless, that's not a huge amount of income to be able to sneak in a lander. Additionally, if you build the lander from here, you're really building it with the purposes of using it on this side. So that means that the lander has to go all the way across here and then load up and then unload before you get your first turn's worth of value with the lander. And so that is going to take, like, you build it, you spend 12k, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And so 3 turns after building it, that is the first turn that you're going to be able to load up unless you're like Drake or somebody. I didn't even think that like Sammy and Drake, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so even Sammy and Drake, they're going to take 3 turns to be able to get all the way over here. And spending 12k and not being able to get any sort of value out of it for like until like the 4th turn after you've spent that money is a pretty serious downside. And it provides a pretty large timing window for your opponent to have just more stuff that shoots bullets on the map. And that can be potentially game throwing. Additionally, you're not really able to have the income to support 3 vehicle bases simultaneously because it is only split map 22k. So this is not something like Stalingrad, where you're able to think about building a copter and then also 3 vehicles every turn. It's just not that kind of map. So I really don't think lander is a good choice on this map, and most of the games I've seen, nobody has bothered to attempt it, which makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk about this airport. So we've got an airport here, and this airport is on the island, which makes it a little bit unique. The main implication of it being on the island is that it is not going to be accessible for you for a while because you're going to have to basically take an infantry, usually from this base down here, and then you got to ferry it over to here. Alternatively, you can send the black boat over at the beginning, and then you can take an infantry from here as well. That's also an option. Although I do think that these 2 bases end up so infantry starved in the mid game that you're probably wiser pulling an infantry from this side, but that's up to how you want to do it. But regardless, those are two ways to get infantry over to here. But no matter what, that's going to take a couple of turns in order to make that happen. And then you have to unload the infantry, and then you have to start capturing it, and then to finish capturing it, and the infantry's got to move off the airport before you can start building anything. So you're looking at, like, I think, like, day 8 or day 9 before you end up getting access to battlecopters at the absolute earliest. And that also means that transport copter openings are just not even a thing. It's just way too late to get transport copters. It's maybe something you could think about later on in the game, situationally, but it's definitely not a part of the opener. So that's kind of a whole opener category that is just not going to be a thing on this map. So you don't need to worry about those as well. Now we can look at the comm towers. So this is a 2 comm tower map, as in 2 for each side. So you've got one on the island, and you've got one in the corner here. So neither of these comm towers are really contested at all. And it's not realistic at all to try and deny them or flip them, except in the case into like the mid-late game where you end up kind of trading sides. And if let's see, did that drawing make sense? The drawing didn't make any sense. So it's kind of like blue gives up on that entire side, and if red gives up on this entire side, then blue can kind of come down here. But if that's happening and one player is at risk of losing that comm tower, then they had better be in a position to take the corresponding comm tower on the other side of the board, or the game's likely already over. So flipping the comm towers is not really a thing. You're going to be able to safely get to 2 comm towers pretty much no matter what, given how close they are to the infantry base, and then obviously the island being totally inaccessible for the other player. So you should be thinking about this, any matchups that you play on this map, in terms of having 2 comm towers, and that is definitely a different feeling than having 1 comm tower. So yeah, expect it. Okay, next up, we have a relatively complicated series of topics here, and the challenge with talking about these topics is that they're all very, very closely related, and so I'm not even sure how I want to start to begin to approach this, but I'll just kind of lay it out for you. So if I kind of skip back a few turns, so we got pipe seams, and we've got fronts, and splitting the map, and then we've also got our pre-deployed missiles. So I think where I'm going to start here is I'm going to start by talking about the fronts. I think that's probably the entry point into making sense of all of this. So based on our movement paths, we've got a very, very fast recon aggression base here on the side. And we have an infantry only base that is pushing in the other direction. In here, in these areas here, you've kind of got a set of properties that are supported by the infantry only base and are vulnerable to harass from the kind of the aggro recon base, essentially. So what happens is that you're either going to get a lot of fighting in this area or in this area. And this is going to go on both sides because you have an asymmetry here in the power that you can project from each of these bases. Early on, this base is going to be able to get infantry into these areas here very quickly because infantry are less obstructed than the vehicles are based on their reinforcement paths. So early on, the infantry are going to kind of reign supreme, and they're going to have free reign to try and grab as much as they can. It's kind of like a land grab scenario. But as soon as this base comes online, and remember, this is the neutral base. So the infantry has to come from here to capture this. So this is not going to be available like on day one. And I think, so move and then day two, capture day three. So the first units being built out of this base here is going to be day 4 due to how long it takes to capture. So there's not going to be like a possibility of day 3 recon from this base because you can't capture it that quickly. But once it's online and you start to have that aggression be able to come from this base, then all this area that once was safe and kind of free pickings for whatever properties you can get your hands on suddenly becomes very dangerous because you're reinforcing infantry into recons, and infantry are not able to fight against recons. And sure, you can try to send tanks from this base, but it's very slow to get tanks all the way over here. You're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just to get here. So this line here is already 3 tank moves from the closest vehicle base. And this is even farther. So even though, as you can see in this replay, Orange Star's got this city, Blue Moon's got this city, you kind of can't stick around this area because as soon as the vehicles come out, trying to defend here is against vehicles is really, really tough. Now you can do mechs and things like that, but even then, mechs are also pretty slow to be able to get here. And all this terrain is very, very open. So it's not like you can stick mechs in a forest or something like that and just play defense or camp it or anything like that. So anyway, what ends up happening is you have this big area of vulnerability here, and then you have an area of a lot of potential fighting here. And so this is kind of this is like front 1 and front 2, but they're all pretty close together. Then you have the center of the map, and this is kind of front 3, where you have potential for vehicles coming in this way, and then you also have your vehicle reinforcement that can come this way as well. And so where they meet, this front 3 is going to be getting reinforcements from the infantry base for Orange Star and vehicles from this base, but it's a little far away to be supported by this base. So it's kind of like 2 bases against 2 bases, but they're not the same because this is 2 bases of vehicles here, and on the other side, this is 1 base of infantry and 1 base of vehicles. So really, Blue Moon should be stronger here. Additionally, this property is 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 infantry moves away from this base. So that being said, this is a very, very central property. And because there is a steady stream of infantry coming from here, this is one of those properties where you can get it denied pretty easily. And especially if it doesn't get captured in the early game, it's something that can actually take a really long time to get captured. Because if all the infantry die in this area, well, you've got these 2 bases pumping vehicles. And so where's the infantry going to come from that can actually threaten this city? And the other side, Well, this base has kind of like an endless stream of infantry that are just kind of running over in this direction. And so you've got lots of infantry to deny captures with. And on the other side, you have a shortage of infantry to finish the capture with, even though the reinforcement distance kind of favors one player. So those are your three major fronts. And then the same thing kind of applies on the other side of the map, where you got like here, here, and then here. And then likewise, you got here, here, and here. Okay, so these are kind of all the segments of the map. And the reason we need to start there is because realistically, as you're thinking about kind of what you want to do on this map, you're going to have to choose kind of which zone your build is centered around. If you want to try and contest like these zones on the side, then you're going to want to favor early recons from these bases here, and so your build is going to revolve around that. If you're trying to contest the center of the map, and you're going to either try to deny or capture these cities in the center, then you're probably going to want to focus on getting tanks from this base. And if you want to focus on fronts 2 and 5 here, then the pipe seam actually becomes a lot more important. I'll just kind of leave this mess of a drawing up on the screen for a minute to let you kind of digest all of this. So that's kind of how the fronts work. Now, what I find so interesting about this map is that the balance of power in each of these fronts, and especially on the sides, really changes dramatically as the game progresses. And I think that's something that's just very, very cool. And so it allows like a lot of strategic options for players to prioritize and kind of commit to in how they build their compositions, and also how aggressively they play, and so on and so forth. So, okay. So, whoops, we got to the end. Well, let's go back in time, because I need more time to explain the map. So, okay, let's talk about now the pre-deployed missiles. Okay, so that's actually, we're going to go back to the beginning of this game. I'm going to take this off. So you start with missiles on your HQ. And this is something that I think has become a little bit more common recently in the map design. And any map designers, if you're listening and you want a tip, I think maybe full HP missiles is not a great idea in general. Maybe we should be starting missiles with 1 HP. But just a free tip, free food for thought about map making. But regardless, so these missiles, obviously they can shoot down air, but as we discussed earlier on in the airport section of this map review, the air is not going to come online for quite a long time. You're looking at day 8 and day 9. Actually, let's see in this replay where they get airports. So yeah, so day 9 is going to be the first day that this airport is usable for both players. So yeah, so day 9, that's about right. So your missiles are not going to be shooting down any air units for a bunch of days, which means that effectively these missiles are a really slow-moving, expensive recon, and that's okay. That's better than useless. And actually, on this map, the way it is laid out, there are a lot of different things that you can do with these missiles. And the discussion we just had on the fronts is very, very relevant to what you want to do with your missiles, because there's a lot more that you can do than you're actually able to do. There are so many useful things you can do with these missiles in the early game, but you can't do them all. So let's talk about what are the things that you can do with these missiles. So one thing that you could do is you can actually just kind of run your missiles over to this side of the map, and you can see both bases. Actually, if you get onto this city here, it seems crazy, but you can actually see both of these bases. And so you can get an idea of what your opponent is building. I would not recommend putting the missiles here. I saw a test game where someone got their missiles trapped here because 2 infantry went here and here, or some shenanigans happened, but anyway, somebody lost their missiles for free. And I don't actually think it is necessary to see both bases. I don't actually think it's super useful. You can choose to see this base by putting the missiles here, or you can choose to see the other base by putting the missiles here. But you can't, like, the missiles are so slow that if you start to try to shift between these 2 positions, it's like taking you 2 turns to get between each one, and you're likely to get run down by infantry or by vehicles. So you kind of have to choose one. Now, if you choose this side here to see this, then really what you're doing is you have the ability to use your missiles as a blocker for this city. So you can just kind of get in the way. Alternatively, if you want to get really crazy, you got all these roads here. So you can actually get to this city relatively quickly. And so one of the things that you often have in the capture sequence is this infantry, well, not this infantry, but the next turn infantry is going to go here, and then he's going to come around to here, and then often the next place you go is to this city. And so that is a 3 infantry move, so that potentially could be in the dark. And so you could potentially, trap the infantry on the city. It's kind of unlikely though, because they do have access to this mountain. And so if they're anticipating this, or they're paying attention, they might be able to put infantry on this mountain to see that you're blocking it, and then you will delay the capture by a turn, but you're going to get your missiles shot by an infantry. So just be aware that blocking this city is a little bit tough, although it could be a thing. But more realistically, you have the ability to block this city, and this city is probably the most contested city in the map. So being able to delay that city from being captured until your opponent has vehicles out into the center of the map can be very useful. So that's one option. The other option is you put it here. If you put it here, then you're going to get vision of this base. And having vision of this base is very important, because one potential build that you could be seeing is you could be seeing early recons from this base. You see early recons from this base, they're going to come down here, and recons can get to the city in 2 moves. And so having knowledge of whether recons are coming is going to tell you, when you're kind of in the land grab phase of the map, which is kind of the early capture phase, it's going to tell you whether you're safe to try and go for this city, or whether you don't have a chance of actually getting it because the recon's going to be there in time. But if you're here, you can't really block this city, and you're kind of losing vision of the rest of the map. So you're a little bit more vulnerable against more greedy capture plays, where if someone tries to go from this base kind of directly to this contested property, you can't really do anything about that. So that could be a weakness of that build. But it does increase your safety down here. Okay, so there may be some other things that you can do with the missiles, but those are probably the 2 things that you should consider doing with them that are going to provide you some value. And that will help kind of allow you to adapt appropriately to what your opponent is doing in the in the capture phase. All right. Now, I think we should talk about, let's talk about the pipe seam finally. So now we're to the pipe seam. So this pipe seam, well, it's in the way, right? Because for this base, everything's got to go around, which is annoying. So why not just take the shorter path here? But even though it seems like it should be really good, it really does. It seems like it should be really good, but if you do the math, it's actually a little bit underwhelming. So let's just do some calculations here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so here, this is 2 take moves with the pipe seam in place. And so with the pipe seam broken, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you get stuck by this forest. So then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So then this becomes your new place. So you're getting 3 squares, basically 3 squares of additional movement from breaking down the pipe seam, but it's only 3 squares of movement for this one base. And additionally, it really only applies to tanks because, remarkably, this terrain here is so bad for recons. If you're building a recon from this base, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you're stuck here. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now you're here or here, right? So you're getting to here in 2 moves. But earlier on, if you just go the long way around, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like sending recons through this way, like you're actually slower to both of these cities than you were if you just like went around. So the benefit for recons is minimal at best. So really what you get by breaking down this pipe seam is you get much stronger access for tanks, especially for this city, and then it's going to open up this city as well if recons by themselves are not strong enough to lock that down. So breaking the pipe seam is going to really strongly increase your strength in kind of the second and the fifth front here. And so there is value in doing it, but it's tuned pretty well. Okay? It's tuned well enough that you can get away with not breaking it. And it's not the end of the world. Like it's still playable without it. But at the same time, if you do break it down, like it is going to provide you like legitimate benefit. It's not like some of these other maps. Dirty Martini comes to mind, where it's like, okay, you've broken it down, but it really doesn't, like, the incentive to use it is really low. Like you are getting you're getting some value here. You're getting some value here if you break it down. So that's not really much guidance. And if you're looking for an answer to the question of, should I break down the pipe seam? Well, the answer is, it depends. Kind of depends on your overall game plan and what you're prioritizing. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why I think this map is so good, because a lot of maps, the answer to that question is yes or no. And here it's like, well, you got some options. And so I think it's really good map design. So good job. So yeah, that's your pipe seam. And lastly, let's talk about contested cities. And this is another one where it's not as simple as just drawing some numbers on the map, as I've done with some of these other map reviews. So let's break this down. So we've kind of hinted at what these are going to be to some degree, but there's some nuance going on here. So first of all, on these side, these two cities are the most flippable cities on the map. Absolutely feasible to flip. These two cities are deniable cities. So likely not going to be able to steal them, but they are cities that you could potentially keep them neutral if you attack your opponent as they try to capture them. And likewise, these two as well. So that's a total of 8 cities that can kind of be up for grabs, right? That's a pretty good number. That's better than you get on a lot of maps. And the interesting thing is that all of this interacts with the bases and their composition. Because what ends up happening on this map is you get into the mid game and you're building like 2 vehicles from these bases and infantry from these from these corner bases. And if you start to take these cities as orange star, actually, first of all, let me draw my traditional line through the center of the map before we get any further. So let's kind of assign who all these cities belong to. So early on, the map is going to split like this. Okay. This is the default. That wasn't a perfect line, but anyway, so when in terms of like the contested cities that we just talked about, so these cities are going to belong to Orange Star at the start, and these cities are going to be, if you're Orange Star, you're going to be working to deny these 2 cities. And likewise, if you're Blue Moon, you're going to be working to deny these cities, and you want to be capturing these cities. Now, obviously, you don't have to you're not obligated to deny them. You don't have to, and you probably can't deny all of them, because if you do, then you're likely putting the ones that you're trying to capture at risk as well. So there's some trade-offs there, but that's how you should think about the map breaking down. That's for the capture phase. What happens then is once things get into the mid game, what can happen here is that Blue Moon can develop an infantry shortage, and Orange Star can develop an infantry shortage here, because these 2 bases are really going to be focused on vehicle production, and all your infantry is like in this corner. It's really, really far away from here, right? Like that's a long way. Infantry are going to take forever to get all the way over there. So if you end up losing your infantry that are trying to go for these captures, or you get them damaged or what have you, then you basically run out of infantry to continue capturing these cities, because you need to pump vehicles here to try and secure this area. But if you're pumping vehicles, then where's your infantry going to come from? Well, it's not going to come from the other side of the map. It's too far away. So you end up with no infantry, and that's why these end up staying neutral. It's because you got all these vehicles, and so you're strong, and your opponent can't overpower your vehicles, but at the same time, you don't have any infantry yourself. So that's kind of the dynamic going on there, and that's why those end up as potentially neutral cities. That being said, these cities become the flippable cities because in the mid game, obviously you have the vehicles, you have the airport that can push down here, and it's very, very difficult to defend this area against air units, especially if your missiles take damage, because the other airport's over here, and any anti-air are going to have to come from this base. And as we established earlier, like this whole area is 4 vehicle moves from this base. That's a lot, especially when you're fighting against like potential 2-turn recon reinforcement down here, right? So that's like pretty tough. And I think this is like 3 turns for the copters, or maybe even 2 in some cases. So these properties become flippable. So Blue Moon's going to often get these. Orange Star is going to often get these. But then in the mid game, especially if this pipe seam gets busted down, then suddenly there's going to be a lot of pressure on these cities to flip them. And so part of the tension of this map is, can Orange Star kill the infantry that are trying to assault these 2 cities, and vice versa? Because if so, then you're likely going to be in a good shape, and you've got like infantry from this base that you can kind of like throw at any infantry that are attacking there, and it's 2 towers. So with 2 towers, 2 infantry kill an infantry on a city. So if you just have like numbers of infantry, you can remove infantry that are trying to capture your cities like relatively easily just with raw numbers. But once you run out of infantry, if you run out of infantry before they do, then you can totally get wiped out. And you can get wiped out, and then you can kind of like lose this whole side. And once you kind of lose this river area, then it's like really hard to recover, because the vehicle reinforcements from here get boxed out by this river. Like you've got this sea tile in this river, and so all the vehicles have to go through here and then down if you somehow like get stuff into here. So that's like, it's like a really bad situation to be in if you kind of lose control of this area. So that's something that you need to be thinking about strategically as you get into the mid game. You bust down this pipe seam, you got a lot of tanks that can come this way, and then these tanks, like I said, if you lose control of this area, it's really bad for this area. Well, if you've got tanks that are flowing down here, this is going to be like a 2-turn tank reinforce from this base, and it's a 3 tank reinforce from this base. So who do you think is going to have better control over this area? Well, it's going to end up being Blue Moon, especially with reinforcements from the airport. So that makes these cities very vulnerable. That's the TLDR. So I think, and this has been a super long map breakdown, and I told you it was going to be like this. This is why I think there's a lot good about this map. Everything that I just talked about for the past 15 or so minutes, any elite level player on this map is going to have synergies between all of these aspects that I just talked about. Because there's a lot of different options that we talked about. We talked about different options for the missiles. There's different options for the builds, whether you start with a recon, whether you start with a tank. How early do you try to go for the airport? What cities do you prioritize in your capture game? All these things are going to work together, and some choices that you can make are going to be coherent and cohesive, and some are not really going to support each other. And so that's really going to differentiate between kind of the elite level players and someone who is just kind of like an ordinary mid-tier player. There's a lot of room and a lot of freedom to have, I think, different kinds of builds that focus on different things that are viable. Going for early tanks is pretty viable on this map because you start out with a missile, so you kind of start out with a recon. So normally tank builds are bad, not bad, but tank builds are weak because they're vulnerable to aggressive captures because you don't have vision to really contest that. But when you start with missiles, that's less of an issue. So tank builds are probably better than usual. But at the same time, recon builds have super fast timings to the corners. So recon builds are also kind of better than usual. So you got to pick one. And which one you pick is going to have implications on how you use your missiles, how safe you decide you want your capture game to be, and so on and so forth. Okay. I think with that said, we can leave it there. But I really enjoyed covering all that. I hope you learned something from that. And again, shout out to the map creator. Is this a bum map? Let me see. Yes, this is a bum map. So thank you. Well done. All right. Let us now finally get into the replay. Okay, we're here on the replay, and we're going to get to stare at this screen a little bit because I just realized that I didn't even talk about the COs. So we're going to do that. I'll try to not linger too long on this because I don't actually think there's a whole ton to say about this, although saying that now, watch me find a whole ton to say. But this is Smacky Cup 5, round 1. I nearly said a different number. This is a tier 4 matchup. I don't think there were any like weird non-tier 4 COs included in this. I don't remember. But regardless, looking at tier 4, and as I've said in many other videos, in tier 4, the CO strengths, there's just not going to be a huge gap in CO strengths that, compared to other tiers. And so almost always, the person who plays better is going to end up winning no matter what COs you pick, unless it's something it's really, really unusual. Like sometimes you could have Sammy maps where Sammy's like way too good, but those are the exceptions. Like normal tier 4, generally the better player wins no matter what CO you pick. So I think people discuss some of this stuff to death and maybe kind of read into it too much. That being said, this map does have some nuances to it, and this is another opportunity. Like I talked about the synergies of your build. This is another way, the CO selection is another way for you to synergize with whatever you're planning on doing. There's good arguments for almost any CO on this map. And so I'll just go through them all very briefly. So Jess, a lot of people are picking Jess on this map. It's very, very open. It's 2 towers, so Jess's weak infantry are actually not really that weak, because they're equivalent to like a one comm tower infantry on another map. So not going to be penalized as much for that. Infantry can still fight. They can't really defend properties by themselves too easily, but it's not horrible. And Jess gets that extra plus 10%, and there's a lot of roads. And when you have tanks attacking infantry on roads and it's plus 30%, you have a 70% roll to one-shot infantry. So that's a pretty important threshold. So Jess just gets that as her day-to-day. So that's important. And that's a pretty good reason for using Jess. But at the same time, if you're thinking about trying to defend this area here or this area here with mechs, that's going to be pretty hard for Jess. Jess mechs, just not great. You can't really get the movement to utilize the mechs very easily. So your weak side is going to be even weaker as Jess. Additionally, you're not getting any movement on your copters. So your copters are not quite as strong, and you're really leaning on these 2 bases of vehicles, right? And so this is actually something that I encountered when I was playing on After Hour Animals in Smacky Cup 4 round 3, where I picked Jess on that map, and I kind of ended up regretting it a little bit, because when you only have 2 bases that can build vehicles every turn, you're really just kind of limited, and you really want to have like as many vehicles out on the map as you can, but instead you're either forced into teching which is an option, or you have to build more air units, but you don't really want to build air units because you're Jess, so you're taking a firepower hit and it doesn't synergize with your powers. So that part leaves a little bit to be desired. But I mean, the tanks getting a plus 10% is a big deal. Anytime you have a chance to one-shot infantry, just with like your day-to-day, that's pretty relevant, and it's gonna be meaningful. Jake, you can make an argument for. I mean, you get an extra range for your powers on these missiles, which can sometimes be pretty nice. There's a lot of grass. So, and there's a lot of grass, especially next to the roads in like these areas. So Jake tanks are good for all the same reasons that Jess tanks would be good. Although it's not quite as simple to set up, but it's out there in a lot of places. Jake's this is a map that the copters can kind of fly over all these obstacles here, so copters are good. So Jake can lean into the copters to go along with these 2 vehicle bases, and that kind of works out for Jake. And Jake can kind of contest tech units like Neotanks with just copters more easily than other COs with block rock and copters and things like that. That's an option to kind of push unit count that way. So that's an argument for Jake. And then you've got kind of Adder and Cole, which they both play pretty similarly. And the argument for Adder and Cole is that they're pretty well rounded. So you're getting extra movement on your infantry, and so that's going to strengthen your weak side. It's going to make it easier to defend these properties because you're going to be relying more heavily on infantry to defend these properties. And initially, you get the extra movement on infantry, and importantly, you get the extra movement on your copters as well. So you're just going to be more mobile across the entire map. If you're playing as Adder, you're going to be getting those powers available very early on. And so you're going to be able to get a lot of movement bonuses. And the movement bonuses for Adder are pretty relevant. And this somewhat applies to Jess as well, but more so for Adder, because Adder is going to be using the CO power more frequently. But if we look at the reinforces from this base, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you can tack on 1 bonus movement, you can actually get all the way into this forest tile here. So sometimes that can open up opportunities for brawling in the center of the map, and you only need 1 CO power to make that happen. So that can be pretty relevant. And I think on this side, if you're going around here, they can get to this city with an extra movement. So there's some thresholds where the 1 extra movement could be a pretty big deal. So that's kind of your argument for Adder. And then your argument for Cole is kind of similar. I mean, there's like a lot of roads in the center, and also you're getting movement on your copters. But with Cole, generally you're trying to play for your superpower, not your CO power. It's based on the movement thresholds, or not the movement thresholds, the charge thresholds. So yeah, and then copters on roads, that's what Cole wants to do. So there's plenty of opportunities for that. So anyway, I said I wasn't going to spend a lot of time talking about this, and I'm not even done because I just forgot about Sammy. Sammy, I think a lot of people theorized that Sammy would be a good pick on this map. I actually am not really a believer in Sammy on this map. And I'll tell you why. I think it's not impossible. I think a lot of people were thinking about, the CO, or this HQ. This HQ looks very exposed. Like, you get, there's no, like, naval unit on it, so you get to, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, you just control your strong side, and you wait till you get a bunch of charge, and then you just kind of victory march all the way up there and win the game, and it's easy peasy. Well, maybe I'm not so sure it's that easy peasy. Certainly 2 comm towers is good for Sammy because Sammy vehicles not going to be as strong. But the problem is this map is so wide. It's so wide that if the more you invest in mechs, the more stagnant you end up being. If you invest in a lot of mechs on your weak side, which is kind of what Sammy would like to do, they're kind of stuck over here. And so if you see that, then the opponent should just go to the other side, and then they're going to have more stuff. And then your mechs are just going to be sitting there. And there's not there's not offensive opportunities from the side. Like, if you control this side, I mean, like, getting here is really tough. You know, you can artillery lock this city very easily. So it, you know, even if you're strong from this infantry base, like, what does that actually accomplish in practice? It's not great. Additionally, for Sammy, this airport is so late that oftentimes, as Sammy, you want to get T-copters out to help your mechs become more mobile. But you don't have the option to get the T-copter early so that you can also have it benefit your capture game. So, for those reasons, I think playing Sammy is pretty tough on this map. I'm sure that some people will find a way to win with her, but I think that this is not a Sammy map. Just my 2 cents. So that's the last time I should say that I'll cover anything quickly. But that's my breakdown of all the COs on this map. I chose Adder. I felt like Adder was the most well-rounded. And I feel like you're never really going to get outpicked too hard if you pick Adder. Because Adder is always going to be, like, playable, usually. So if you're not really totally confident about what to pick, you kind of can't go wrong with Adder. You'll always at least have a chance to win. And my opponent, ryfia, also I picked Adder, actually. And this was pretty early on in the pick cycle, and not a lot of people had picked Adder up until this point. So I was kind of surprised to be playing an Adder mirror. I thought it was much more likely that I'd be running into like a Jess pick or something like that. But let's start this game, finally. All right. Oh, we set things up. And let's talk about what I'm going to be doing here. So I am going to be moving my missiles to here. I want to know what is going on with this base. I want to see the recon timing. And what I'm going to do here is, if we skip ahead to the next turn. So now with this second infantry from the weak side here, I can load this guy into the black boat, and then I'll be able to unload onto this comm tower and get to this city very quickly. And if I get to this city right away, that is not going to be possible to be denied. There's no way that anything can get there fast enough to stop me from getting this city. And additionally, if I don't see recons from this base, then that's going to give me free reign to send this guy over and just get this city. And then I'll get those 2 cities early. I won't have to worry about any sort of early recon pressure, and I can just get those 2, and then I'll play back on my side of the river here and just play defensively. And that'll allow me to focus on the rest of the map. That's my plan, for the missiles at least. Okay, so we're going up here, loading this guy up. So I will say that this is not the only choice that you can do with the black boat. So if you're not going for this, you can also choose to start sending the black boat over to the other side of the map to get access to that airport more early as well. And that's just another, that's not necessarily a wrong option, but that's a different It's a different style of play if you really want that airport a little bit more quickly, or you want to prioritize taking infantry from the other side for whatever reason. That's kind of an alternative, but that's not what I'm doing. Okay, so going to be standard capture stuff for a while. We see an infantry there. That's the infantry that I think just finished capturing that city. So next turn would be the first possible vehicle coming from there. The infantry come here. That's, I think, the normal timing on that guy. This guy goes over here, and we see another infantry made, so that's good. That means that there's no first turn recon. So this guy, I think, we're likely going to be okay to be able to get both of these two cities pretty efficiently. But there's no reason for me to leave either, right? Like if he built a recon, then he'd see that my missiles was there. So I'd probably have to retreat the missiles immediately after seeing the recon. But since it's not a recon, I'm just going to leave it there and see for more turns. Now I am going for a recon, so conversely, I'm checking for aggro on this side. I'm setting up my own aggro on this side. I want to get to this city as quickly as possible. And if I get the recon onto this city before Adder can get any infantry on here, then I'm basically going to be permanently denying the city, because it's going to be very, very difficult for any sort of tank to make it all the way over here and remove my recon. My recon, it's just so much faster than any tanks can get over there. And so get these two, deny this one, and if the rest of the map shakes out even, then I've got a little advantage. So that's kind of how we're playing. The one downside to this early recon is that we're not really getting a lot of infantry from this this base here, and this city is like 2 infantry moves away from the base. So I am taking a little bit of an economic hit early on, but that's an aggro build, right? So we're going for an aggro build. And so now with this guy on here, we see the missiles. We knew they had to be around somewhere because they could have been here, and we would have seen it with the recon. So if they weren't there, then they had to be somewhere else. So it looks like they are kind of here. So I'm interested to see if they end up going on to this city and blocking me, which would be pretty annoying. And so now we're going to start shifting our black boat over to start working on these airport and comm tower tiles. So we see the missiles go into the woods, which is fine, I guess. So the missiles can see this base, but this base is just an infantry. So I guess we're showing that we don't have like a day 5 tank build, but that's all we're giving away, so that's fine. Unfortunately, we see this infantry coming down here, and that is the downside of trying to kind of see this information. Pink is going for a early capture of this city, and because I'm here, I can't block this, and because I decided to stick around here, I can't block this. If I put the missiles here, then I could potentially sacrifice some HP on the missiles to delay the capture of the city long enough for like this capture to finish, and then I'm in position where we can start to like deny this city and start infantry fights over here. So that's something that was available to me, but my choices prevented me from doing that. So that's a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors win for my opponent. Yeah, it's just what it is. So moving the recon up, not really seeing anything. Not too surprising. So we know that now we're totally free to finish this capture. This does likely mean, so at this point I'm assuming that this is a double tank opener from this base, because you see all infantry from here. You just assume that there's lots of tanks coming from here, and that's a pretty good build, honestly. You just use the missiles for vision, and then you just send tanks to the middle, and you're going to be really strong, especially against recon builds. If you're sending all your stuff to the middle with tanks, and your opponent has like any recons at all, you kind of own these middle properties, and you might not be able to capture them, but you can at least deny them, and you're going to be stronger. So it's a pretty good play. And I'm going for a second recon as well. So my idea here is we're going to send them both this way, and ideally we're going to get like some infantry pickoffs with the second recon, where the recons are trying to capture something, and we just we get in there, and we don't give the infantry a chance to escape. We just we knock them out in one hit. And having two recons, I mean, it's good for later on. We see this infantry go north. So that's pretty interesting. That means that there's a black boat here, and that this infantry is about to go to the airport. So now that infantry is going to get unloaded here. So we know the exact airport timing as well. So that's pretty important. It's not super meaningful, I guess, because I mean, we know the airport timing, and it's the most common timing to get your airport. So I mean, hooray, I guess. And unfortunately, we can't really stop this. And this infantry just comes right next to the missiles. What's up? And now we see a recon. So our time here is limited. We don't need to necessarily leave right away, because we have like one more turn that we can wait here. And this is actually kind of an interesting nuance. It's going to sound a little bit counterintuitive, but we actually want our missiles to take some damage. It would actually be kind of nice if we took 3 damage. I think it's a roll with an infantry, depending on some things, but regardless, an 8 HP missiles still one-shots air units. And if my missiles take damage, that is more charge for me. So if I allow 1 infantry hit on the missiles, and no more, exactly 1 infantry hit, that is actually optimal. It's very counterintuitive. That is what you want if you can create a situation where that happens. Additionally, this situation is perfect because by leaving the missiles here one more turn, I am blocking this infantry from capturing. So I'm going to be costing my opponent 1,000 gold. So that's pretty good. So I'm just going to leave this missiles here as I continue capping. Now we send the recon up, and what in the world is going on up here? This is not the configuration I expected to see. So I've been foiled. My opponent already has this city. Not only do they already have this city, but they got this city as well that's already being captured by the infantry that used to be here. The only good thing about this is that this city is open. Additionally, we see a mech. What? What is a mech doing here? It's day 7. Build 1, 2, 3. This mech started capturing the city on day 6. So, all right, we got some things to unpack here, but it's not great that our recon, which was like the earliest we could have built the recon, by the way, our recon basically got denied the very city I was trying to lock down. That's not great. But at the same time, we see that this city is uncapped. And so it's like, I'm not going to be able to deny this city, but at the same time, I can just deny this one instead. It's basically the same outcome. And additionally, this is really, really important. The fact that I know this mech exists is critical information. It's critical because the game's only like 6 turns in. So it just has to be a day 3 mech. It has to be. There's no like fancy calculations or, there's only one way the mech could be here on this turn, and it's a day 3 mech. If it's a day 3 mech, what that means is that we're not playing against the 2 tank opener. The fact that we're not playing against the 2 tank opener is pretty important because based on what I've seen so far, if I didn't know this mech existed, then I see a lot of infantry from this base and now finally see a recon, but I'm assuming that there's 2 tanks in the field, and so I've invested really heavily in recons, which means that when it comes to getting like these 2 cities, I have to be very defensive about how I'm going to capture those because I can't really fight against 2 tanks. I've got 1 tank, but I'm pretty delayed. So that's kind of a weak spot of this build. Like, because I'm going aggro here, it means I'm weaker here against certain builds. So now that I know that this mech exists, well, we're not in the 2 tank world anymore. We're in like potentially like a 1 tank world. I think I don't remember if I back calculated out everything or something, but I think it was like, okay, so this is a mech, and then day 5 was a tank, and now this turn has to be double recon or something like that. It was something like that, is what I was assuming was going on. Also, this capture path is kind of inefficient because you have to like ferry the infantry here, and then he goes here, and then he goes here, and then here, instead of going directly to here. So you're taking a 1k hit by doing this capture route. So anyway, it's not great. It's not the end of the world, but the recon's information ends up being really relevant. We're kind of ignoring this comm tower. This guy will get the comm tower, but we've managed to lock down all of the cities that we're supposed to get as part of like the land grab aspect of the game. Now we see that the missiles have left, so the missiles are probably here or here, I guess. And now it's time. We just need as many tanks as possible now. We've got way more vision than we know what to do with. We just need tanks. Our missiles will take some damage, so we get 2400 charge for free, and these missiles still will shoot down air units. It is now time for the missiles to leave. And so now these missiles end up blocking the city, which is a good move. It's a little bit unfortunate because the only reason my opponent can do this is because the recon ended up on his city, so he got vision of the recon that way. So he knows that these missiles are safe to go here. It's kind of obnoxious, but what can you do? But to be honest, I don't think I could have gone for the city anyway, because I likely would have been tank fodder. Maybe, I don't know. But it can't be helped. It's a good play by my opponent. But we will just go ahead and take this city safely, and then we're set up to deny this with both of the recons. And we are gonna poke away at the pipe seam here. We need to get 3 pokes at it to get it down to 96. Once it's at 96, a 2-tower artillery will take it down in 2 shots. Generally, when you see a pipe seam hit for 1 damage, it is an infantry, but in this case, it's actually a recon. We can't really do anything with the recon because we're already locking down this side. We can't really contest the comm tower because there's really likely to be tanks in here. And this comm tower is like, you really want to put your recons there, like they're just going to get killed. And then you're still not going to be able to delay the comm tower. So the recons aren't really super useful. So this is at least getting some value out of them for now. And then we just show the tank because Ryfia Pink saw me build this anyway with the missiles that were in the forest anyway. So it's not like I need to hide its existence because my opponent knows about it already. And so now we're just going to try and apply max pressure on this city. If we get this city, then we've basically achieved half map. So that's the next objective, and we're gonna put all our power towards trying to get this city. And now that we know that there's a mech here, we just leave because there's a mech, and my opponent spent money on the mech. And so if we just decide to no longer attack there, then we should have more stuff elsewhere on the map, wherever we decide to concentrate. And so now I'm getting an artillery. And this artillery really has two purposes. So I have the option to break down the pipe seam. But getting the artillery from this base, there's actually a pretty nice positioning here where I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. I put it here, and then it's locking this city, which is going to be very helpful. But also, if my opponent doesn't commit to the city, I can still just kill the pipe seam. So guaranteed to get some value. And this is the right time for the artillery. Not too early, not too late. And now we're pulling infantry from here over here because it's really likely that this is where the fight's going to happen. So we just need all hands on deck. This recon bonks into our infantry here. But that is fine because all of our captures in this area are now finished. So it's time to just play defense. We see this guy retreat over here, but that's fine because we are not going to be fighting over here. So you can see that we're getting these cities like really late, and that's the consequence of us going for this early recon harass. Our captures of those safe cities are kind of delayed until pretty late, but they are still safe cities that belong to me. So now we are going to go for the city, but we're right in vision of the missiles, so I think it'd be pretty surprising if we didn't get harassed. Now, it's very tempting, right? Because this tank could totally just hit the missiles. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This missiles is 2 tank moves away from this base. And so if we do that, we are likely activating a tank. And it's actually probably good to trade your missiles away for a free tank in the early game if you get the opportunity. And so that trade is being offered to me to basically give up my tank to hit the missiles, and I don't want it because that will basically prevent me from being strong enough to ever take this city. So we're just going to let the missiles be there. So we do see a tank over here. Not super surprising that this would exist. And it's here presumably to defend any captures on this. But we are pretty well concentrated in terms of our units. I do. This is kind of cute. So if I go in So I saw the infantry go into here, right? If I go into, so I don't have vision of this tile. Now I don't expect anything to be in there, but if for some reason there was something in there, and I go in here, then this tank bonks and is here, and then I can't clear anything out of the forest. So if I go in here and the tank bonks, then he's stuck here, and then this tank and this infantry can kill whatever in the forest in the center. I don't want to go this way because then the missiles see the tank go in. So it's like for all the, and also I think the missiles see the tank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, the missiles don't see the tank, so never mind. I take it all back. But regardless, if I went this way, then it would see the tank go into the woods. So that's the reason for the weird move. But seeing nothing there, not that we expected anything to be there, we are just setting up to counterattack if anything comes to fight us on the city. You see the recon come in here, which is fine. You see stuff. I've added in a mech. It's a little bit late, but I do want something that will at least prevent the recon from just harassing my infantry to death here. So it's not too early, I'll tell you that much. And then we're just focusing on tanks because the next day we're gonna have 19k, so that's a good copter buy turn. But I think last turn we were on 17k. So if we were going to build a copter, then we couldn't build a tank with that and without base skipping. So anyway, on to the next turn. So unsurprisingly, this guy gets interrupted. So this guy decides to fight into this infantry, which is fine. Let me see the tank retreat. There's a lot of infantry over here, so it's pretty clear that he's not going to give us this city for free. But these infantry are pretty juicy. I could clear them off with my own infantry, but then I'm rolling to clear them off. So instead, I'm going to use these recons. And we're just going to try and trade effectively. And this is a little bit of a bait situation. So I've got all my stuff ready. The one thing about playing on a 2 towers map, recons are paper thin against tanks. Even on cities, you take a tank hit and then 2 infantry hits, and your recon's gone. And on planes, 1 tank hit and 1 infantry hit, recon's gone. So recons die really, really easily. At the same time, tanks are going to be the things that are going to be hitting the recons. I have all my tanks here, and any sort of attack is likely going to involve follow-ups on like these guys. And especially if there's a follow-up on this guy, well then we're going to be trading a full infantry for a 5 HP infantry because of that artillery. So there's some bait elements to this. And we got anti-air because we know that our opponent's airport is coming online this turn, so we want to get this anti-air out on the map. And then our own copter as well. Even though you start with missiles, you can't just ignore copters. The missiles are super, super not maneuverable, can't shift, really slow. So it's pretty easy to avoid sending your stuff into missiles range. As long as you know where the missiles are, if you're fighting somewhere else, you're fine. And copters, given the terrain of this map, have a lot of flexibility to front shift and things like that. And we're also going to help you free up these bases to produce infantry, because this part of the map is so infantry starved. So you want to take opportunities to be able to build infantry from those two bases, especially if you're fighting in this area here. So one infantry goes down. So it looks like we're going to be trading infantry here. And then tank and recon kill the other infantry. So that kind of sucks, but I mean, it's okay. I guess we're going to be fighting. And the missiles plug the gap. So, okay. I mean, now it's kind of interesting because now removing the missiles actually has some merit, because we do have a copter that's going to be joining the fight imminently. We see the recon kind of go back to the city. Fine. You now see more infantry. All right. So now I'd like to point out to you that we took 2 HP damage on this missiles, and that was 2,400 charge. I now need 4,600 charge to get up to my CO power. And it's very important that I get up to the CO power this turn, because the CO power is going to make this turn especially powerful. The CO power enables a bunch of thresholds that allow me to one-shot units. For example, so we talked about this in the map review, but I'll reiterate this. Tanks with 130%, which is 2 comm towers plus the CO power, have a 70% roll to one-shot infantry on roads, of which there are some here. And additionally, a tank with a CO power actually has a 90% chance to one-shot the missiles. So what I really want to do is I want to just get this extra 4,600 in as few attacks as possible, so that I can take advantage of those thresholds. Additionally, this tank, so I don't really want this tank to come in and hit this infantry, because this artillery can kill the infantry for free. I want this tank to come in and hit this infantry, but I need CO power for that to happen. And this tank with the CO power can actually hit this infantry and potentially one-shot it. So I need CO power for that to happen. So in order to make all that happen, I kind of had to like futz around with the calculations, and I don't really want to like send a tank into the missiles, because if I wait for the CO power, then I have the likelihood of removing it in one attack. So I need to find a way to kind of make up that missing 4,600. But I point this out because if I had not taken the damage of the missiles, this would be a lot more difficult, and maybe I wouldn't even be able to use the CO power this turn, and I'd have to play like an entirely different type of turn. But basically what I've come up with here as a plan is I hit this tank to generate some charge, and then I can move this infantry over to hit this infantry. I send the tank up here to hit this guy, and if I get the 70% roll here, then this guy goes away, and I can move this infantry over here to finish removing this guy. So then these guys are both dead. This guy is dead. And then from there, the turn becomes very easy, because we just go tank, tank, and then there's a tank here that hit this guy. And then this tank has a chance to remove this guy. And it's a pretty devastating attack. We have the chance to remove all these infantry, this missiles, this infantry, and get first attacks on both of these tanks with the CO power, and we're creating like a wall here of units that on a pretty good defensive terrain for us. So it's like the opportunity is really quite good. So first of all, we just need to get to we'll do our capture stuff. So we get here. So now that gets us pretty close. Now we're 1,500 away. We can remove that infantry, because that's always going to happen. it's possible he could be capturing this city, but if I win this fight hard enough, it won't matter that he captures the city because I will be able to flip it back just by being really strong in this part of the map. But so now we need to get 1,000 charge from somewhere else. So we can do this infantry trade because that's always going to happen. So that gets us 450 away. Unfortunately, we don't really want to do any more trading here with anything else. I could send like this guy into this infantry, but this tank is going to be hitting this infantry anyway, so that's not really ideal. So the best thing that I came up with to get this remaining charge is actually to sack one of these infantry into the recon. And I probably, in retrospect, should have done that before doing this attack, because I might have saved myself some damage on the infantry, but anyway. Regardless, so this gets me over the threshold, and so now we CO power. Okay, so let's do our attacks here. Come on, 70%. 70%. It's okay. It's okay. So, I mean, the first plan's out the window. We can't take this infantry and go here, but that's still like not the end of the world because we can send the tank in here, remove this missiles, and then we can still at least hit the tank. So that, and like, okay, this guy's going to survive now when he wouldn't before, but it's not the end of the world. Are you kidding me? So that was a 90% roll that we failed. So now we can't even get to this tank anymore. So now I'm just like, I'm losing my mind. Like, anyway, so we'll just finish. So that's a 70% chance, 70% chance, and 90% chance. They all failed. All three of them. They all failed. I did the math. It's not very hard math. The chances that all three of those rolls would fail is less than 1%. Less than 1%. And now I have this stupid tank that basically can't do anything. I could YOLO and try to like go into the forest here. And I'm actually I'm reasonably confident that it's empty based on like what I saw the previous turn with the recons and like what could have moved in there. But I'm not 100% confident. And it's one of those like, it's really scary. And also I'm a little bit worried like that like the mechs could be shifted, or a mech, because we saw a mech, right? Like the mech could have moved over at this point if I'm over here. So I'd much like being here is a lot better than being here, because it's much harder to activate a mech that could potentially be over there. So I'm not really crazy about going to the forest. So I mean, we basically don't have any choice. We just have to kill the tank, which it's not nothing, but it's not what we wanted. And so now this turn just became an absolute horror show because of some terrible RNG. And I mean, at least like the infantry trade is pretty good, right? We cleared out the infantry pretty well. But I mean, it's just ghastly stuff. And what we get is a disengage. Oh, and we start to get harassed on the weak side as well. Okay. Well, not gonna lie, I'm at this point of this replay, I am super tilted. Super tilted. I don't usually get tilted. I'm usually able to control the tilt, but that was special, and not in a good way. So anyway, we got to keep playing. We got to do our best to play through it. So first order of business, we've got this artillery locking this city. So we need to see if opponent took it last turn, which it was not taken. So at least that's good. So we still have this city on lockdown, and so now we can start chipping away at this this pipe seam, because that was the secondary value of having this artillery. We're simultaneously locking the city, and we're going to open this up to better control this area. I can't really attack anymore because now my opponent has a lot of charge. And so now I'm the one who kind of has to play defensively. And that's unfortunate because it means like I'm not in a position to get this city anytime soon. I need to retreat these infantry here in the center and kind of repair these guys and see if I can make a go for it. Now, it's not the end of the world. Like, I don't have this city, but my opponent doesn't have this city either. So we are just at even income. But my prospects for getting this city, we talked about this in the map review. If you don't get this city kind of early on, it becomes pretty hard to get it later on because you just don't have the infantry to keep up with the flow of infantry from this base to be able to control this section of the map long enough to actually get the capture off. And we don't really have a good answer for this recon over here either. But what we do have is we do just have numbers. And so we can defend this city for a while just by kind of throwing unit counts, throwing bodies at it. So that's what we're going to do because we just don't have a great alternative to doing that. And I think I make kind of a greedy move here. I'm going for this recon in this forest. And then I think this is also not great either. I want to move this guy back to the city so he can heal. So I actually kill the recon from here. I think that's probably dumb in retrospect. I should have just moved this guy back here. I'll wait an extra turn to repair him. And then this guy can fight from the bottom. But because this guy's here, like, he's just going to get picked off for free. Like, there's no way that it's... Look at the tiles here. Like, it's just going to get killed. And this tank is super exposed now. And I can't really stay here because any adder COP is going to be pretty bad for me. I only got one tank in terms of that. So, like, if my opponent has a really strong first strike, I mean, sure, I got a lot of damage on the missiles, so my air units are going to be good, but if I take a bad engagement, I could be losing the tank fight. And if I'm losing the tank fight, then I could be in real trouble. So I really just can't afford to be in the middle of the map, very exposed. So that's just where we're at in the game. We gotta play a little bit more defensively. But we can kind of trade these guys in on the city to at least delay that. We're not going to give up that city without a fight, even though we're fighting into an uncontested recon. Probably should have... could I move that guy closer? Yeah, I probably should have just moved him here, I guess, but I don't know. He's on the city. And then this guy's going to move over just to kind of see what's up. Okay, so we're gonna lick our wounds after that fight, and the idea here is that we need to get out of here. So we can't really accomplish a whole lot over here, and there's really two choices that we have. So one choice is we can go over here really, really strongly, and that's not a terrible plan, especially with this artillery over here. That's one thing that we could do, and we're decently set up to do that. And I think maybe in retrospect, that probably should have been what I went for. But instead, I'm thinking, okay, let's see, instead, we just try to play defense over on this other side and try to shift faster than my opponent can catch up. Because I'm starting to invest more heavily in the copters, and I've got, my vehicles are reinforcing over here as well. So that's the theory. I'm not sure it's the greatest theory, but I am adding on some anti-air because I know it's very possible that my opponent will have copters and my opponent is adder. So be really surprised if my opponent didn't have copters, at least a few of them. And you can't like rely on your missiles alone to be your anti-air. Anyway, we lose that infantry as expected. And unfortunately, we end up losing this tank for free as well. And this is just like a really bad trade. I should have just left the recon. It's when the recon is just sitting there right in your face, like you gotta kill it. You gotta kill it. You gotta kill it. But yeah, it wasn't the right decision, I think, because trading infantry and a tank for a recon is just dumb. And my opponent's getting very close to super. You don't really want a superpower as adder, but at the same time, like, if I take a bad enough fight, like, it could be over. So I have to be really defensive. Like, I'm not going to be able to CO power and then receive a CO power back. I'm going to be taking the brunt of whatever, CO power attack comes my way. So we have to respect that and just play defensively now. So that guy retreats. And then this guy gets cleared off. I mean, this is like a textbook attack on this weak side. This is exactly what you should do. Because everything's over here. So my opponent is playing this really well. This is exactly what you should do. You just try to bleed the infantry numbers out, and you bleed them low enough, and then eventually you're going to be able to come in with force, with vehicles, and take control of these properties. This, however, this is too much. This is unlikely to happen. Not enough damage has been done to warrant this, and the pipe seam's still up. So it's very hard to take this property without first at least removing the pipe seam, so you can get a bunch of tanks to back this up. So that one's not as justified of a capture, but it was good until that happened, basically. And we do see stuff starting to shift over. So I think that's fine. I'm going to try and just play defensively on the other side of the map. And there's no real targets for me to capture over here. This is purely a defensive front shift. Because I know that if I don't send stuff over here to defend, eventually I'm going to get worn down. I'm going to start to lose these properties. And I don't want to split my forces any more than I am. So I'm kind of spread out here, so this is like not great. Like I need to get down here and really consolidate. But I'm gonna go for this city just to see if I can force him to fight around this artillery. But I'm not expecting this to go through. I mean, this is like, I want to get the artillery in these woods, and then we can kind of do like a grinding approach on this city over the next couple of turns. And the pipe seam is now broken, so we are able to kind of get out on the map into the center more quickly now. So that is the only thing that is going well for us. Because if you look at the units lost, like, I mean, we're down in deaths. We've done more damage, but it's basically all in the missiles. So it's not, and we're even income. So my opponent is way more charge. By every metric of this game, my opponent is winning. Let's be very clear. I am losing this game right now. It's not over. It's not even like necessarily a major disadvantage, but I'm in a worse position than my opponent is, undeniably. So we're going to shift over. We don't really care about being seen. It's kind of hard to hide a front shift from missiles and an opponent that controls the center area. We're mostly just focused on being on good terrain and trying to be as consolidated as possible. That's really what we're hoping for. And now it's Neotank time. So I saved for that last turn. So now the Neotank's going to come over here, and I'm hoping that I can basically like counterattack with the Neotank. Assuming I even get attacked. But at least this is like the right time for the Neo. So we see some more infantry trading over here. This is overextending, and these weak side infantry are super valuable because it's really hard to get infantry built from these bases. So I'm happy to trade infantry like this. This is very good for me, and now there's no pressure on this city currently as well. We see tank coming over. It's pretty obvious that our opponent is front shifting as well. Yeah, another tank comes over, so. And the recon's on the city. That's fine. What's surprising is that this capture didn't get interrupted. I was really expecting this capture to not go through, but it did go through. So we take those. We'll take that and claim our income lead of 1K, which is more than likely completely irrelevant. But hey, if we get it, we get it. So at least that's something that's good for us. This position is actually kind of good for us too. These infantry are going to die. And so far, the infantry trading over here has been pretty good for us. We need to make sure that he's not trying to steal this city, which he's not, so that's good. We get some mech value. You'd love to see mech value. And then this is usually a one-shot, so this is... I wasn't really sure if I should do this, but I was like, yeah, you one-shot a recon, you take it. Like, and we see a copter too, so that's good. So now we know, like, all right, we need to make sure that we got some anti-air in position to defend this tank. This is honestly probably pretty sloppy copter positioning. It doesn't need to be this far forward. I don't know what benefit it has being this far forward, but anyway, I'm nitpicking a little bit, but probably shouldn't be nitpicking when I'm losing, right? Anyway, so we're just going to try to set up a defensive position here. This guy is super exposed. He's probably going to die. That's fine. But we've got a lot of infantry here. And this is the one good thing of fighting down here. We are moving our army to meet up with where all the infantry is. So if a fight happens, we're hoping that our opponent has to waste a lot of vehicle hits on infantry. And then every vehicle hit that's not on my vehicles improves the odds of me being able to counterattack successfully. We're just trying to put all of our stuff reasonably far back. So this is like the contested property line here. And we're like pretty well behind this. So if we get attacked here, then if we don't die immediately, we'll probably be okay. Because we're very far back. And we're utilizing the terrain pretty well. Like other than this tank here, like this guy's on a city, this guy's on a city. These guys are behind some walls. these guys are behind the high defense, and this is behind a bunch of stuff. Okay. So this is what I would describe as the hold on to your butts moment, because you know it's going to be bad and you just don't know how bad it is. And my vision over here has been terrible because I lost my recon. So like I have no idea what's going to show up out of the darkness and is going to be flying into my army right now. So let's hold our breaths and let's see if we're still alive after this turn ends. Now, I'd like to say that that was a 70% roll. And that's how 70% rolls are supposed to go. 70% of the time. Wouldn't know what that feels like. But it's nice to see that maybe the RNG isn't broken for both players. And this is really nice. Well, let me say this. I don't know where this recon was positioned beforehand. And I guess you needed CO power to have the 70% to clear this guy off. So that you could get this recon in position to see everything. But, so, I'm not going to nitpick that too much. But what I will say, this is really good tactics, right? You put the recon in first, you see everything. And then you can formulate how exactly you want to execute the rest of the attack. So this is a really good way to do, if you're going to do like big death ball yeets, like this is how you got to do it. All right, we see a Neo tank. That's scary. Let's see what else. Okay, infantry clears off the tank. I don't know if that's a roll and I don't care. All right, tank comes in really deep. Another tank comes in. Okay, yikes. Copter down to 1. Excuse me? I'm not familiar with that unit. Yeah. Fighter? Huh. Interesting. What do they do? Oh my gosh, look at that movement range. Holy smokes. So yeah, fighter and a Neo tank shows up. So that's crazy. It's especially crazy because that's 2 tech units. And I just now I'm just getting my first tech unit to the fight. So that's a lot of tech. It's a lot of tech. You would think that means that there can't be that many more tanks behind it, because it means day 14. To have 2 tech units on day 14 is like 2 turns where tanks aren't being built, you would think. Copter comes in, hits this tank for a lot of damage. Okay, infantry finished off the tank. Just 2 comm tower things, I guess. Ouch. Ouch. Okay. Wow. That hurt. Let's take a look at, down 6 units and 31k in damage taken. Not great. And I'm gonna have to counterattack into a 10-10 or a 10-10 defense bonus. So that's not good. However, my opponent is very, very overextended. Like, the fighting is happening like around my comm tower. That's pretty deep into my territory. So if I'm not dead, I'm probably alive. And Mechie Boy is still alive too. Incredible. Look at that mech value. Somehow, this guy is an absolute stud, and he's going to get some value this turn. So, the way this works is this Neo tank can move 6 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he needs to move to this square. And if you'll do the math, 6 plus 2 will get me there. So while Adder normally would like to use CO powers, we don't really have a choice. We got a superpower. Because that Neo tank needs to die. Well, I can't kill it outright, but I can damage it. And if I win the ground fight with the tech, then I will be winning the battle, more than likely. It's inconceivable that there would be more than one Neo tank from my opponent, based on the amount of tech that's out there on the board. So this is what happens when you extend pretty deep, right? Like, if this fight was not taking place so deep in my territory, this Neo tank would not be able to join the fight. But this is basically an extra 22k unit value that is contributing to the fight purely because the fight is taking place very deep on my side of the map. And as you can tell by the amount of damage that I've taken so far, an extra 22k of firepower is really, really needed. Anyway, let's do this. I will have you know that that was also a 70% roll that I lost. Not to belabor the point or anything, at least this time it's not that relevant because I have a copter to finish it off. Now we can send the Neo tank in. That's more like it. All right, so that's a lot of damage on the Neo tank, and now Neo tank's on a city as well for me, so it's going to heal up next turn. So unless there's like a bomber that's going to show up, it's pretty good for me. We get a free copter, mech, your hero kills the tank. And now we get an anti-air shot on the fighter. So at this point, like, I'm looking at the units lost, and I mean, it's not that bad, I guess. 13 to 16. So we're still down a few units. But already, like, I kind of can tell, like, the fight is going pretty well for us just because we've done so much damage to these tech units. And if we have the Neo tank and there's nothing to counter the Neo tank, you just cannot fight anymore. You have to abandon the fight. So we want to try and get as much damage of the infantry as possible so that we can prevent this city from getting capped. And we move this missiles now. So now this missiles is actually covering the Neo tank. So even if a bomber somehow were to show up, we're actually probably okay because we got this missile. So we're going to get some value out of the missiles, at least just by covering the Neo tank. So that's kind of, even if somehow my opponent goes for, you know, all these anti-air, we're still going to have some countermeasure. And I get a nice hit on the recon, which could have been a one-shot, I think, had there not been a power. But regardless, can't be helped. We just reinforce more infantry. And it's nice. Like, this infantry is already in the battle, one turn away from the base. So again, just the benefits of fighting in your own territory. Might as well go for this capture. Unlikely to work, but we can set a trap. I say as I wait like 10 moves for the trap to be set. So yeah, set the trap, put the artillery in this woods here. We could have put it here to cover everything, but I think any attempt to clear this guy off is going to involve units on both of these squares. And if there's a unit here, then this is actually a better place. So I think this has and additionally putting it here means that if like nothing comes to interrupt this, then this guy can shift over to be as part of the fight as well. We are leaving this side of the map very, very empty, but that's okay because we need everything with the fight. Like we're down on unit count, so we have to just be really clumped and making sure that all of our units are contributing to the fight, because everything depends on this fight. If we win the fight, we're probably okay. If we lose the fight, then we're losing the game most likely. That being said, we do have a backup plan. This recon is coming from this base, and this recon's job is just to kind of go up here and make sure that there's no like back capture attempts on any of these properties. We should be able to stall, like even if my opponent comes through with like a surprise attack on one of these properties, I should be able to delay it long enough for the recon to get there. So now this is a CO power. I think this might be a mistake. So I'm getting like a ton of infantry cleaned up here. Because the fighter retreats, the Neotank retreats, and these tanks kind of, this is all like YOLOing for the anti-airs. But the reality is, if you can't deal with the Neotank, you can't fight anymore. You have to back. You just have to back and try to go for, live for another fight somewhere. I wasn't expecting a mech to show up here and help interrupt the cap, but good job, artillery. You're the best. So now this is quickly falling apart for my opponent. Missiles, they're going to shoot. They're going to shoot. And even though my opponent has a power active, the extra 10% defense, not going to matter. So, as I said many turns ago, 8 HP on the missiles, no problem. Still doing their job, no problem. So then we need to get vision. I hit the desk so hard that I skipped a turn. Whoops. That's a mood. So anyway, that would be another 80% roll that I missed there, and then I lose my recon. So if you're counting, that is the 5th 70% plus roll that I've lost this match that resulted in I guess 4 of them resulted in units not dying when they should have died. And this one resulted in my unit dying also. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not happy. Yeah, but anyway, there's nothing to fight against the Neo. So the Neo tank can just chill and eat tanks because he's a hungry boy. And importantly, this Neo tank is still covered by the missiles. So we don't care. Like if a bomber shows up, like who cares? It's not a big deal. And frankly, if a Neo tank shows up, like we've got enough copters that we can deal with it. Because we're cleaning up everything over here. This is what can happen if you tech too hard. You tech too hard, and then you don't have those extra like 4 fighting units. And then if you somehow you lose the tech battle, you just have less units. to fight. And sometimes this game is just about like having more stuff that shoots stuff. You came here for the 2-hour analysis, but I mean that's like bottom line for a lot of games. Just have more stuff that shoots stuff. That's comes down to it a lot. So anyway, so copter comes in there, tank comes in there, clears up, some wounded anti-air, but this is kind of tunneling on the anti-air a little bit too much. Like that's not a real great trade. And this infantry is like really overextended, and it's okay. Like we don't really need anything here as long as my opponent also does not have anything that can take these cities. And so we don't see anything. And this guy's 9 HP anyway, so he's not taking anything anytime soon. So it's fine. And now we see a retreat here. So these guys are just totally left on an island. We know the Neotank is probably back here. So yeah, we go strong over here, and let's see what our so we're still down like 5 units, but we just know like we've done way more damage, right? Intuitively, like this is one of those situations where the unit loss tab is like pretty misleading, because it's like pretty even in terms of like the total value of the units lost that have been killed. That doesn't account for the fact that there's a 3 HP fighter. Doesn't account for the fact that there's a 4 HP Neotank that's getting repaired up. That ends up those 2 units combined. That's about 25k to 30k of net worth. That's been repaired, or not repaired, but been lost. That's not accounted for in the units lost tab. So we just take a look over here. We don't really see anything, so that's good. We're starting to get some recons over here. We want to build up our offensive potential in this direction again, because now that we've defended this side, and this side is not really in danger, this area is going to be the next target. And so we'll eventually, like if the game goes on, then we will continue to shift over in this direction and start applying pressure onto these bases. But for now, we need to finish just cleaning up this left side here. So we can take out that copter. So copter ultimately for a 3 HP anti-air, not really a great trade. This fighter blocking the junction here is kind of annoying, but we're still going to go in. We're not going to bother using our COP to get onto the city. It's not worth it just for an extra 3 HP of damage on the tank. If something comes in to fight this tank, then that's fine. We've got the rest of our army to reinforce that. We're going to do some vision shenanigans here to make it look like we're going into this tile, but actually we're going into this tile. Then Neotank here, covered by the missiles, and also out of vision. We don't need to actually kill the infantry this turn, because this guy is not going to be getting away, that's for sure. And this fighter is low on fuel. We don't really care about the fighter. I guess he could get refueled by the black boat, but I've got anti-air roaming around now, so that's not going to be an issue. And now that everything is kind of rotated back this way, I think it's really unlikely that I'm going to be able to capture the city, even though I kind of dealt with the 2 units that interrupted me last time. So we're gonna chill. We have time. We're still up in income anyway, so there's not really any pressure for us to establish dominance over this tile yet. We can do it later on. And in fact, we got the artillery back here as a counterattack option. But we're just gonna play carefully and let things slowly build up and as long as we stay consolidated, like wherever our death ball is, we should be stronger at this point, just based on how the fighting is going. And recon comes in to take a peek, and that's the end. So what a ride. So I felt like I was just getting jobbed out for about 14 days, and then I had just enough in the tank defensively. I had a good defensive position, and my opponent did went for the killing blow, but it didn't quite get me enough to knock me out. And the positioning of that Neo tank, I think, was fatal in the end, and that's what kind of swung things. So we survived round 1, but this was a real nail biter, and I think for the majority of the game, our opponent played really, really well and made it into the mid game like solidly ahead. I think I was definitely behind, but in Fog, it's really hard to win and close somebody out without making any mistakes, like end to end. And this is one of those games where you see it a lot. Like even elite players can get themselves into trouble against less experienced players and kind of be in bad positions on the board. But a lot of times, newer players or less experienced players just don't quite know how to leverage that advantage into an actual victory. And it's really hard to win Fog games, and it's really easy to lose Fog games. And I think this is one of those situations. So let's take a look at this full vision recap. Normally, this is just a formality that we do, but I actually think in this situation, looking back at the full vision is much more interesting than usual, and it's gonna show us a lot that we didn't know previously. So I mean, look at the ending state. So there's a bomber here. So did have a counter to the Neo tank available, but to be perfectly honest, it was never going to be a major threat because I always have just like enough anti-air in the back to trade for any bombers that show up. And with copters and 2 comm towers, you can deal with a Neo tank just with copters, at least to prevent it from like running around one-shotting your tanks. So, and there's no anti-air at all in here. There's none. So, 3 copters against no anti-air. This was always going to be headed in one direction, at least the result. So, let's take a peek. Let's go through. So we see the day 3 mech, like we knew had to be the case. And then day 5 tank, which is what we expected. And this was actually a recon infantry. I actually thought this was going to be a double recon turn, but I was wrong. Not sure what the misunderstanding was. Actually, so yeah, so delayed this property here. So I think like this is, so looking back, sending this infantry down here, I think was a great move. Great move, and if you're in the opening phase of your game, I would consider doing that too, especially if you don't see the missiles blocking you. I think that's it's worth the risk, because my opponent was able to get this for the whole game, and I was never able to get this city. And I honestly, I was never even close to getting this city for the rest of the game. Like, it was gonna be really difficult. This, I'm not crazy about this. I mean, I think getting this city is a little bit more efficient. And then if you just don't get this one instead, because it's like you're choosing one, right? Like, you're getting one of these, but you're not getting both. So you might as well choose the more efficient one. But I guess my opponent didn't know that I was going to go like aggro recon. So I don't know. It's easy to make claims about what you should do when you see the whole map. Yep, so This is all we kind of knew what was going on here. Recon sees everything, so I know, okay, I can actually fight with my tanks. We just got tanks kind of filing in here. So one of the reasons I was so confident in taking a fight here is I know that there's a mech over here, and later on I know there's going to be a recon over here because he bonks into my infantry here. And so if I have like all my recons and all my tanks and I have no mechs over here, and I just put it all here, like I have to be stronger. I just have to be. And we actually see a second mech here. So you got to be careful about mechs on this map. It's a big map. Adder can use the CO power, but especially mechs early, you got to be careful because sometimes, like this last turn, yeah, it's not taking away a tank necessarily, but I'm not sure what could have been spent instead of the mech, but these mechs were totally irrelevant in the game until like they showed up in the center city on like day 16 or whatever. So mechs are good, but if your opponent sees that you have them and just leaves, then they're not good. And that's something that good players will exploit. Okay. So this, with full vision, this attack here is absolutely bonkers. It's totally bonkers. There's no follow-up. There's a fighter here. There's no follow-up. And by the way, there's a base skip for the Neo, so that's pretty nuts too. So like, what I did should have just crushed this. And yeah, I know that there's like a mech that's covering this tank, but if the fight, so take this position. Imagine that this guy's dead and these two guys are dead too, because if there's any justice, they would be. And then this tank is here, and this guy's like 3 HP. Like, what do you do? Do you CO power to send this one mech down? I mean, I guess you can activate this tank and hit this tank, but it's still like the follow-up turn to this is just going to be catastrophic, because the fighter is such an investment, and this fighter is replacing two tanks that could be joining the fight this turn. And so because there's no further reinforcements this turn, like if this fight doesn't end immediately, then Pink's getting crushed. So to initiate that fight, I think was really wild, but it kind of works out because the rolls happen the way they did, and so Pink ends up not taking enough damage and is able to just disengage, and it ends up kind of being okay. And now the Neo tank's online, so it's actually like I don't really have a good answer to that. It's good that I didn't try to like chase into this because I would have gotten stomped. So, and now I'm expecting there to be like 3 more tanks than there actually is. Like, these 2 tanks show up here, and I'm assuming that there's like way more stuff behind this. Now, I guess there is a mech kind of blocking this off. So I'm correct in assuming that I can't fight this, but my position is way stronger in this area than I was expecting. And if I had just decided to go over here, like, what is there? What is there stopping me from taking this? Like, everything's over here. So, easy to say in retrospect. My vision is total crap, though. That's what's killing me. My vision is total crap. Because I lost both my recons. So, that's why vision is so important. Vision in fog, beyond the combat power of the recon, which sometimes can be useful, having vision prevents you from it prevents you from making dumb mistakes, and it helps you make better decisions. And a lot of times, like, that's incredibly important. And I'm not making optimal decisions here because I just don't have good vision. If I knew the mechs are over here, yeah, I just come over here with all my stuff. What are tanks gonna do? Or sorry, what are infantry gonna do against tanks? Like I've got infantry in position. I can just eat these, but still can't believe that he let me have this. This infantry just could have delayed this, and he could have shifted more guys over. But anyway, so now everything is over here. This is kind of crazy too. So this is actually really crazy. First of all, repairing these missiles, I mean, that's wild. And artillery over here on this base, like, that's not good. That's just wasted money. It's strange because I feel like he saw the front shift. Like, let's look from. He's got like a recon here. Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't see it. I just kind of assumed his vision was further forward. Do I have anything that pops like into his vision? I mean, it's just this tank. Huh. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a genius and I like disguised this front switch way better than I thought I did. But I don't know. We take those, I guess. But anyway, so I guess maybe he's thinking I'm out of position when this fight happens. But then, like, when this recon comes in, like, sees everything. So I think you gotta assume that like everything is together. So I don't know. I think really the critical mistake. Here, I'll tell you what the critical mistake is. All right, so right now we're looking at this position. This infantry needs to check into the forest. This recon needs to go into the forest, kill this infantry. That's the first move. Okay. You do that first, recon sees everything. Then, this is all before the power. You see everything's here, and you do the math on like how everything's going to turn out at the very beginning. And if you don't like what you see, your recon dies, and you just wait for a better opportunity. But instead, it was just a little bit greedy and not quite sequenced properly, and my positioning was just barely good enough. Just barely good enough. Excuse me. And yeah, that was the difference. Wondering if there's like a way that this could have been sequenced a little better. Interestingly enough, the fact that this recon goes here, in another world, the Neo tank could go here, and you could try to clear the tank off of the comm tower instead of this city, and just use tanks. I don't know if he's got enough stuff. This is the problem. Like because there's so much tech, like there needs to be more tanks. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vehicles, and it's getting attacked into by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vehicles, and then that's not including like the stuff that's reinforcing as well. So it's like 8 to 8 in total, and you're going to end up being really overextended. And just, I don't want to belabor this point. Look at all this stuff. Look at all this stuff. It's so much stuff, and it's completely irrelevant for the fighting. It's completely irrelevant because stuff is not, it's not clumped together. And so you see I'm even more spread out than I should be. I've got some guys kind of trickling over, but in this next turn, like even this guy is able to participate in the fight. So ultimately, even though like if you look at the army value here, I'm down like 44k, but at the same time, there's a lot of army value tied up here. It's just not in the fight. So your stuff isn't worth anything if it's not shooting at the other stuff. Okay, well we've reached an epically long length of analysis, but I knew it was going to be like this because this game was kind of popping off, honestly, and the map is kind of popping off too. So we needed a lot of time to cover it all. So yeah, that's going to do it for this replay and this map and round one. So to the rest of you all still duking it out in round one, best of luck to you. I hope you have a fun time on this map like I did until the random number generator started rolling numbers. And best of luck in the rest of the tournament, and hopefully I will see you back for round two and another good game to cover. So when that comes around, I will see you, and until then, have a good night.